Good evening, everyone, and thank you all so much for joining us here in this virtual space here tonight. My name is Vanessa Morrison, and I'm a community development strategist here in Oklahoma City. And I'm also a proud member of Black Women's Voices OKC, and we are a collective of Black women and our allies who are working very intentionally to create a platform for Black women to share their stories, their truths, and their experiences here in our community through panel discussions. And I am just completely honored to be in this virtual space here tonight as a moderator to just speak to our distinguished, phenomenal, amazing panel of Black women leaders from right here in our city on a really tough topic on Black women's experiences in the workplace environment. And we're really going to take a deeper dive in understanding how racism manifests in this space, how Black women experience racism in this space, and what can we do to create more equitable work environments for everyone. So thank you, ladies, for being here. And I just wanted to pause to acknowledge the fact that we are so privileged to be in this audience and to hear from these ladies, because these are not conversations that we often have in public, or even certainly not a live stream. And a lot of that is due to the fact of many Black women do not feel comfortable, supported, or even safe enough to speak about these topics openly. And so I just want to personally thank our panelists for their courageousness, their leadership, and just the representation they're bringing into this panel tonight, because I know it means so much to me and to so many of the Black women viewers who are tuning in tonight, as well as our allies and individuals who are really committed to creating more equity in the workplace. So thank you all so much for everything you're doing and being a part of this conversation tonight. So a few things before we get into the panel. Quick disclaimer that the views and opinions expressed on this panel do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Black Women's Voices OKC, nor its sponsors. And speaking of sponsors, we have a lot of people to thank tonight for helping make this conversation possible. I'm going to start off by thanking Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma, our title sponsor. Thank you all so much for your sponsorship and for helping make this platform possible, along with Whirl, Heartland, True Sky Credit Union, Good and Group, Bumbershoot PR, and thank you, Metro Family, as well. And if you are interested in supporting Black Women's Voices in our platform and these conversations, you can do so by visiting the Oklahoma Women's Coalition website. The link is right there below, okwc.org/donate. And you can donate right on that website. And if you put in the memo or in the comment box, Black Women's Voices OKC, that donation will go directly to our platform and will help us to be able to have these conversations on an ongoing basis. So thank you for your support. And we thank the Women's Coalition, the Oklahoma Women's Coalition, so much for partnering with us and helping make this platform possible. So to set the tone for tonight, I want to encourage everybody to comment, like, share, ask those questions. This is an interactive panel. Unfortunately, we may not be able to get to all the questions that we receive here tonight, but we're going to try hard to be as engaging as possible. And also, if you're watching on Facebook, go ahead and create a watch party so your friends, your coworkers, your family can watch alongside you and learn and grow with you as well. And with that being said, please do not say anything disrespectful to anyone on the panel. All disrespectful comments will be screenshotted, reported if necessary, and deleted. So let's just keep it respectful and honor the women tonight who are having this tough conversation, okay? Thank you all. So without further ado, I'm gonna do some brief introductions of our phenomenal panelists, and then I'm gonna get into our discussion. So first, I'm gonna introduce Ms. Kitti Asberry. She's the Executive Director of the Oklahoma Commission on the Status of Women. We have Ms. Monique Bruner, the Director of the Center for Success, Inclusion, and Diversity at Rose State College. We have Ms. Joanne Davis, the CEO of the OKC Black Chamber of Commerce. We have Ms. Francie Ekwerekwu, who's an attorney at TEEM, the Education and Employment Ministry. And last but definitely not least, we have Ms. DesJean Peyton-Jones, who's the Executive Director of OIC, Opportunities Industrialization Center of Oklahoma County. So welcome, ladies. Thank you for being here tonight. And again, I cannot thank you enough for your courageousness, your leadership, and the representation you're bringing in tonight for this discussion. So to start off, I'm going to lay a little bit of context about the discussion questions I curated. And I cannot start that off by thanking one of my sheroes, Miss Minda Hartz. She is an author of a book called The Memo, and it has been just such a critical resource for me in understanding my experiences, building community with my sisters who are in workplace environments, and really just putting messaging and language to my feelings and understanding how to navigate and survive in these environments a little bit easierly. So thank you, Minda, for your representation, for creating a book that represents me and my experiences. And to anyone who's looking to understand more about this topic, don't only just tune in, but find a resource like The Memo, because it's going to be vital in understanding Black women's experiences in the workplace. So thank you, Minda. So first question, ladies, and I would love to hear from all of you on this. I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that we know our community is hurting right now. And when our community is hurting, we're hurting. And so wake up each day and see, from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep, representation and just a broadcast of the injustices that are impacting your community can be almost unbearable, right? From police brutality and instances of that going on in communities across our nation, to seeing the disparities of the pandemic disproportionately impacting our community. It can just be unbearable and very hard and heavy to carry every day. So while I was preparing for this panel, I saw this quote on social media by a woman named Shaniqua Golding, and it states this: "Your Black employees are exhausted, scared, crying in between meetings, putting on a performance, and mentally checked out." How do you feel this quote speaks to the state of Black women in the workplace right now and what we're really going through? Joanne, I'd love to start with you.
Okay. The descriptive words you used in this quote was exhausted, scared, crying between meetings, putting on a performance, mentally checking out. This really is nothing new. Black women have had to deal with this and have done this for many years. What is new is a spotlight on the experiences that we have had. Every woman, every Black woman who has worked from slavery up to now has experienced those things. We, as our mothers before us, have done that. We've hidden our exhaustion. We've covered our fears. We faked it till we made it. And we have compartmentalized each and every aspect of our lives, from work to home, back to work again. What's different today is that we have, everybody has a front row seat to what we're experiencing. Yet no one can or seems to be able to offer a solution, even if it's nothing but, "I'm so sorry."
Thank you, Joanne, for sharing that. Francie, would you like to add to that?
Sure. I feel like this quote is very true for a lot of women, including myself. Exhausted, tired, scared, to be particular. But I don't think this is true for every Black woman. I think other Black women choose to be vigilant against this and refuse to feel these ways because they have felt these ways before, and enough is enough, and they're choosing to respond in a different way. And I think that every person, and every Black woman for that matter, deserves the opportunity to respond, defend, assert, and protect their status as a Black person, as a Black woman. And I find myself, even though I'm exhausted and tired and worried, mourning, fearful as a mother, fearful for other Black mothers out there. I find myself making sure I don't project my feelings onto other Black women or expect them to feel the way I do, because it's their right to channel their feelings in the way that they see best for their life. So that's kind of what I wanted to say about that. I do feel supported by my employer, and so that is a blessing and for granted, but you just can't help but look up and see all the issues we have in our world and not have times at work where you just break down and cry, and I've definitely had those moments.
Thank you for that perspective, Francie. Dr. Monique?
Yes, this quote is particularly hits me close to home because I've had all these feelings, right? Especially now with the pandemic, I've found that it has increased my anxiety level and has made it very stressful for me. And so what I've done during this time is try to be a mechanism and support other Black women so that we can talk through the troubles that we have at this time. And I've decided that I'm tired of faking it till I make it and trying to be the peaceful one, and that, the Black woman that sits behind and says, oh, it's okay, I'll get that job next year or something. I'm tired of that. So.
Thank you for sharing. Ms. Kitti?
Is my mic on? Oh, okay, thank you. So for me, this quote has 3 replies. Number 1, how women are currently feeling. 2, how women may have felt. And then thirdly, how women know that eventually they will feel that way. So the first one is, a lot of women feel this way because they know that they are probably the most qualified woman in the room. However, she's being overlooked and undervalued. So that's why I think that women feel that way. Number 2, I think women feel these types of emotions because those are those type of women who are in senior positions, who know that they should be making decisions. However, when they speak, they're not being heard. And then for my third reason that I feel that women, particularly Black women, feel this emotion is that we know that eventually we will feel this way because it has happened continuously and is still happening. So we are always going to feel some type of emotional drain or distress or something like that, because it's just a pattern. And unfortunately, it's hard to break, but it's a continuous cycle.
Thank you, Kitti.
You're
Ms.
welcome.
DesJean?
I think what makes this time, not particularly unique, but what makes it different from some previous times is that it's relentless. It used to be that what's happening in the workplace and those feelings and that exhaustion from being overlooked, from being under a microscope, that you could come home and find that place of safety. And what's happening in this pandemic and this season of unrest is that we come home and then we're bombarded with more images. I know that there is not a Black mother alive seeing George Floyd cry out for his mother that didn't resonate with us. And I think that sometimes the rest of the world doesn't understand. They wonder, well, why is that hitting you so hard? Because what they don't understand is that man looked like my son. That man looked like my husband, my father, my brother, and my neighbor. And so you take all of that happening in what was our place of safety. And now as we head out into the community to go to work, when you open your garage door, the shallow breathing begins and you start taking short breaths. And it doesn't stop. You get into the workplace environment because you know that it's a place that sometimes is very hostile for you. And you can't breathe again until you get back to your place of safety. Black women have the thickest skin of any collective body on the planet. And what a lot of people don't understand, particularly about this conversation, they think that, well, why do we have to make it safe for Black women? Because when it's safe for us, it's exponentially safer for everybody else. So this conversation becomes not just about us and our pain and our exhaustion, but about everyone's.
Thank you, ladies, for sharing those personal perspectives. So beautifully illustrated, and I cannot agree more. Our next question from inspired by the book as well. Miss Mendehart speaks a lot on how Black women learn to really settle into discomfort and pain into the workplace. And she speaks to how it is so easy to get desensitized to this pain and how dangerous of a place that can be for us when we just stop feeling. So DesJean and Francie, I'd love to hear from you all. How do microaggressions, would you say, typically show up for Black women in the workplace? And how do we usually have to cope with those?
You know, those, it's just like if you've ever had an injury, maybe you twisted your ankle a little or hurt your knee or something like that, then you begin to walk in woundedness, and you walk in a way, to favor that wound so that you can still move around without it hurting quite so bad. After you get it fixed, you don't realize that you've been walking in woundedness. And what those microaggressions in the workplace do is keep us walking in woundedness. Things that other people would never think about. You know, when you are a Black woman in the workplace environment, and the higher up you go, the more difficult it becomes. Those microaggressions become things that other people don't understand, where you're constantly under a microscope about what you wear, your clothes, your temperament, your hair, your nails, your approach, the words you choose to use, the stories you tell about the activities you engage in. For everybody else talking about their weekend holiday, it's different for you because every detail that you're offering is giving someone a further glimpse into who you are so that they can judge that. And then there will be other things that will get said. Well, we don't want to move her because we don't want to put more on her plate, or that's not her role. You know, all things that, though we're citing them as problems, other people will decide that those things, that's just really not a big deal. When in fact, it really becomes a huge deal with the environment feeling, just feeling not safe and dangerous for you, feeling hostile. But one of the things we have to do to cope is to develop that business persona. Some people might call it being fake. No, it's developing the persona that you introduce into your work environment so that you can still function. And we have to be open to educating the people in our environment about the things about us. It may not be everybody, but when the questions come about us, we have to be the ones willing to answer those questions and looking for allies.
Thank you, DesJean. And I think too often we discount how that stress and anxiety can impact us mentally, physically, spiritually, holistically. And when you spoke to that feeling of feeling wounded, that really spoke to me because it can be very taxing to walk around and have that pressure on your back. Thank you for sharing that, DesJean. Francie, would you like to add to that question?
Sure. So microaggressions that I see, and I'm going to speak from a setting of the courthouse, the Oklahoma County Courthouse. There are microaggressions towards Black women and Black people everywhere on a daily basis. The criminal justice system itself is hostile and attacking to Black people and Black women. But in particular, when I am just walking around hearing conversations of staff members, attorneys, judges, anybody who's in the courthouse, there are many microaggressions that I hear. Some in particular have to do with Black hair. As a Black attorney, I was very fearful, a year and a half ago or so of putting Senegalese twists in my hair. I wanted them so badly. I had wanted them for a long time. And as soon as my hairstylist did them, I got really nervous and thought, I think I need to call in sick tomorrow. I can't go to work like this. They're going to think this and that of me. I panicked. And that shouldn't be. I shouldn't be panicked about what my hair looks like just because I'm Black and I'm heading into a courtroom. But I got tons of comments, including microaggressions concerning my hair. You know, there are judges and attorneys who, you know, won't even look at me or call me by name. I get called attorney or counselor instead of being addressed by my name. And that has to do with what I consider last name bias. You know, I have a Nigerian last name, and people don't want to put effort toward, you know, respecting my culture. That is my culture. That's who I am. And I don't get that same respect that other attorneys get with, you know, different cultured last names. I look at how my clients are treated and how they are, you know, scolded or admonished for the clothing that they have on in a courtroom, or praised for having a tie on. You know, my Black male and Black female clients who are dressed well, they get praises for being dressed well in a courtroom when, you know, white counterparts are not being praised for being dressed well in a courtroom. It's as if we are not expected to meet a standard or a professional appearance. When, where does that come from? So the way I cope with it is I am mourning that I am sleeping a lot to make sure I am rested and ready for this war. I am talking to anybody that will listen about these things that are happening, people who cannot detect them, people who can detect them and don't know that they're necessarily happening on a given day. I am asserting my culture. I am making sure that I don't back down, and I'm not fearful just because I've received negative feedback. I'm all the more confident the next day because I will not allow anyone to make Black women fearful of who they are and what they look like, and not be proud to show that in a courtroom. So that's what I wanted to add. Very briefly, I also sit on the Oklahoma County Jail Trust, and in a recent meeting, a white ally stood up and told me, you know, Francie, the reason why you cannot, you know, get the response you might be looking for with certain jail trust members is that they only see you as 3/5 of a person. And that really hit me very hard. And it made me recognize that whether he's right or not concerning my fellow trustees, he's right concerning many people in that courthouse. And that's just a microaggression and a constant thing I'm having to carry to detect whether the person I'm talking to sees me as a whole person or 3/5 of a person. Everyone who's a praying person, pray over this courthouse. The microaggressions are alive and well, and it is more damaging than we know, and it's something that I'm constantly in prayer over, and that's how I cope with it.
Francie, thank you so much for sharing those experiences, and it just breaks my heart to hear you to speak on that. And, you know, something I want to acknowledge is that all the women on this panel, again, are distinguished, decorated leaders in our community and are still facing these, and I'm not even going to call it microaggressions at this point. These are blatant, aggressive, hateful experiences that they have. And so I can't imagine maybe a woman who doesn't have the highest level of education or maybe the best, most fancy resume. How are they being treated? The women who are not as empowered or maybe don't have the opportunities that the women on this panel have, how are they being treated? And when you talk about individuals in the courtroom, I know sometimes you're talking about some of the most vulnerable people, the people who are in that courtroom, and to know that they're experiencing that is just heartbreaking. Thank you for sharing that, Francie. So this kind of segues into my next question about the stereotype that we all know, which is the angry Black woman, and how so many of us have this very real fear each and every day we walk into the workplace of being labeled with the stereotype that has been assigned to us by dominant culture. And when you fear being seen as an aggressor or violent or angry, that can be debilitating, silencing, and damaging to who you are. So Kitti and Joanne, I'd love to hear from you all. What is your advice to Black women who have this very real fear in the workplace each day? Kitti, make sure you're unmuted, please.
I must be good. Okay.
Yes.
I don't know why it won't hold when I hit it, but I was hitting it. But I'm so sorry. But for me, that's one of those phrases that people put on us when they're either feared or they feel challenged with anything that's going on that they're either saying or doing. And it's so shameful that they think that because we raise our voice that we're angry. No, that's not why. We're raising our voices a lot of times in order to be heard. And we are such emotional people where our body language tends to appear to be as though we're angry when we're explaining something, but that's not necessarily the truth. One of our biggest challenges that we have to overcome is not showing too much emotions when we're trying to explain situations that may not be in our best favor. You know, we tend to sway a little bit, or we may put our heads into a roll, or whatever the case may be, but it's not because we're angry. We may be a little bit upset because you're not looking at what we're really trying to convey, or listening to what we're really trying to say. However, people have labeled us as angry Black women for so long based upon some of the experiences that they have had with other women. And those of us who don't have that anger within us, because it is there sometimes, and it's there for just cause most of the time. You know, when you hear that elevation of that voice or anything like that, then you're automatically going to put people on the defensive edge. So as far as being labeled the angry Black woman, I think that's a big misnomer that a lot of women carry on our shoulders, and it has weighed us down for too long.
Thank you, Kitti. Joanne?
Yeah, it took me a minute in the workforce to realize I had no control over other people's preconceived notions of who I was or who I am. So I had to work through that angry Black woman theory. Well, how I did it was, if it was an issue associated with something that had a discourse to it, I always try to speak with authority, but with a lot of policy or to the point with it. Meaning that I had to know everything that I was talking about. I had to be clear with it. And if I was going to attack something, I had to make sure that I wasn't appearing as if I was attacking the individual, but making sure that the issue was what I was aiming for, whatever that might be. And that took a lot of years of literally finessing that so that I wouldn't necessarily have that moniker of angry Black woman. And then after you get to a certain point in life, and you've been in the workforce for a long time, you know, if that's something you want to put on me, okay, put on me. But we're gonna, if we have a heated discussion, it will be about the issue. I'm not sure we can get around it. I don't know if that's going to ever change, because it really isn't about what we're presenting. It's about what they feel about us, whoever they are. So I just say, when I have had to manage people, to say, you know, stick to the issue. If they've got a problem with you, that's their problem. Don't you carry it, but you stick to the issue to discuss or to handle your point. That's something that I had to learn, and I just didn't carry it. I refused to carry it. And if you have a problem with me, that's your problem and not mine. And that takes years. I'm not saying that it doesn't. That takes years of talking to self, breathing like we've heard before, breathing before you go in there. But it does take a little experience and even a little age, because when you get to a certain point, you recognize who you are and you don't care about anybody else. So.
Thank you so much, ladies. And can I just add that we are passionate people. We're expressive. That is our culture. That's who we are. When we stop talking, when we stop expressing ourselves, that's when you should be worried. because that means we're not focused and we're not prioritizing this any longer. This has left the room. So embrace that cultural nuance of our community, that we are expressive, we are passionate about what we do. And it doesn't mean that we're necessarily angry. And if we are, that's okay, because being angry is a regular emotion that we're just as have a right to have. But we are passionate, we are expressive, and that's just who we are. That's just how we get down. Thank you, ladies. Okay, next question. Women of color, specifically Black women, have the worst pay and leadership representation across the board, despite being one of the most educated demographics in the workplace. In these situations, how can Black women advocate on behalf of themselves? Dr. Monique and DesJean, love to hear from you on this.
I think that it's very important, not just for Black women, but for any employee, that you have to be willing to first speak up. When there are situations that occur, you have to be willing to say something about it. I love what Joanne said. One of the qualifiers has to be, you have to learn how to remove the emotion from it and get right to the heart of the matter. Even if it's someone hurt my feelings, we've got to get right to the heart of the matter. What is your position on that? How do you feel? And to learn how to express ourselves, without tears, without all of the baggage that we bring from earlier situations. So we've got to first speak up. The second thing I think is important to do in the workplace, and one of the things I've learned as far as my development, as a professional, is to seek service. Many of us will find ourselves in positions where maybe they're not seeing our value in the company, but there are some other things we can do. For example, seek out positions that will allow you maybe board service to represent the company, so that you're kind of putting a front-facing perspective on the organization, through nonprofit service or something like that, where you're representing the organization. And then finally, I think that we've all got to be sensitive about packaging ourselves. And this can be a really sensitive thing. When other people on the job, Black women are intensely loyal. When other people are dissatisfied in a job, when they feel like they can't move, when they feel like they are mistreated, what will they do? They'll put their show on the road. And sometimes, that loyalty for Black women, will dog us and work against us, whether it's in personal relationships or on the job or what have you, where we'll want to just, I'll stay and see if it gets better. And we certainly should do that. But what we can't be afraid to do is package up your experience, your accomplishments, your skills, your value, and shop that to someone else who may be more appreciative.
Beautifully said, DesJean. Thank you so much. Dr. Monique?
So this is an issue that I've really worked on for years. So I work in higher education, and I'm probably more educated than any person on our administrative team. No disrespect to the people who are there, but I just once was told, in order for me to get ahead, I needed to have a doctorate degree. But once I got the doctorate degree, the upper administration positions were still not available for me because I wasn't at the right place at the right time. I maybe didn't have the look that I'm going for. Or, well, so many people see you as the angry Black woman to be in a leadership position. I don't know if that's the image we want to go with. And for years, it bothered me. And I said, I just said, okay. But now I'm at a point, kind of like Joanne said, I'm older. I don't care what the people have to say anymore, because I need to speak my piece. And so while we do need to have the education and the experience, we also have to seek out those things if we don't have those. So I've worked very hard to be the most qualified person in the room, but I also know what I'm worth. So I know what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do. And I know I need to speak out for something else. But we need to go ahead and have our education. We need to seek out other ways that we can get experience, like DesJean said, about working on boards and being on different committees, statewide committees, get a city appointment or something so that we can be in a different room and we can still share our words and our experiences. And regardless of, and we have to know that you own that. You are not an imposter in your area. Imposter syndrome is very strong, but you don't have to stay at that place. I was recently in a meeting, citywide meeting, and I made the comment about the big house being culturally inappropriate. And I didn't think that that needed to continue on. And it was met with much resistance. It was printed, and I mean, you know, and since that time I've been getting, you know, trolled because I said it reminded me of a plantation slave home, or it reminded me of a jail, and something that we all as city taxpayers, if someone disagrees with that, I think it's valid for us to give our concerns. And so that came with years of education and feeling okay with myself, being able to speak out and clearly and talk about what I wanted and didn't want.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Monique. And I think you all bring up such a great point in putting yourself out there in the community and joining boards and being civically engaged. And I just want to put out there as well that these boards have to do better at diversity inclusion as well. I saw a graphic on social media. It was a meme, and it said, "Thank you for your Black Lives Matter graphic. May I please see a picture of your executive leadership team and your company board?" And I thought that was just a call out. Like, it was real, because while we want to get into these positions, a lot of times we don't always have the relationships to get into these positions. So how are these boards being inclusive in their practices and making sure they have representation at the table? So thank you all so much for sharing that. Okay, next question. Minda's book speaks to the unspoken rules in office politics all throughout her book. And she speaks on how she didn't really understand this in the beginning as an upcoming professional, and how this really could have saved her a lot of heartache and pain, as I'm sure we could all relate, if she would have known all of these unspoken rules and this office space culture. So what would you say, Joanne and Kitti, are some important lessons that Black women need to learn to survive the work environment that they're in? And how can they be supported in learning these nuances and these unspoken rules that we don't always have access to before coming into the workplace?
Well, the first thing I'd say, be observant and be a listener. It's often uncomfortable when you're in a room of people that you don't know, in a place that you've never been, and you start a new job. One thing one of my mentors told me was, never go in a room, in a meeting, without a pad and a pencil. Take copious notes. Find out who's speaking, who's talking. Just be highly observant about everything that you participate in your office space or new area. When you're in a room and someone's taking the lead, figure out who they are and what their job is. It's little things like that will help you facilitate knowing what the unspoken rules are without you having to say a word. But I never went anywhere, based on my mentor telling me, I never went anywhere without a pad and a piece of paper. And by the time I got finished, I knew who was who and who was doing what. And I think that's important. Another thing, and Zoom, I mean, COVID has done a lot of things, so now we're Zooming. But another mentor told me, go to the little parties, after parties at work. You don't have to stay. just drink your glass of water, let them see you, then you leave.
Mhm.
And when I started the workforce, I had a baby and had been married a long time. And so I had to rush home. So those events, I had to be very careful about when I went and how long I stayed. But they told me that. And so I used that practice because it got to the point where I got to know the people, but more importantly, they got to know me. And so they're just tricks to the trade. And I will tell you this is something I tell everybody. When you see somebody new that you don't know, then that look like you need to talk to them and get them acquainted with what's going on. It's not a competition when you see somebody, and particularly when it comes to Black women. I'm going to come over to the room, ask you your name, how you doing, where are you working. We're going to have a real talk so that I can get you as acclimated as I am. Because I find that what I always believed in any workforce is that I might not get to the top, but I'm going to be a step for somebody else to move past me. And that's what I always kept in the focus. So with this, in terms of these unspoken rules, and I'm telling you, they're there and they're everywhere. You just have to be observant, watch, look, see, and take your notes and use those things to your benefit.
Mhm.
Thank you so much, Joanne. That's some solid advice. Thank you. Kitti,
Yes,
would you like to add?
without a doubt, I would just like to echo what Joanne definitely said, because you do have to keep your eyes, ears, and everything else that got a pour or a hole in it open, okay? Office politics are tricky little animals, because even people that you think may be your friend are not your friend. So therefore, you even got to watch them too. And it's sad to say this, when we as Black women, we do want our sister girl to be our ally, but unfortunately, there are times we just can't even trust her. And I hate to say it, but it needs to be said. So therefore, when you're talking about politics in the office, it's good, like Joanne said, to find someone that look like you, but also find someone who have similar experiences that you have, someone that you can trust, because you will need someone that you'll need to talk to occasionally. It's important that you build those internal and external relationships. Internals are your coworkers, externals, those that you interact with outside of your job, because like Joanne said, when those parties are going on and you want to go and hear the conversation that's not being said in the room that you're not in, then you want to be a part of that as well. You want to learn your company's core values when you're talking about office politics and all that stuff, because what's important to that company is going to be important, should be important to you, because that's how you're going to move up. As far as gossip is good when it ain't about you. Gossip is bad when you're talking about the others, okay? So try to avoid it, but listen in and hear what's actually being said, because a lot of times that gossip can get you a long way as well. I'm a huge fan of thinking twice and speaking once. Because if you know what you're going to say before it's said, you can have a chance of putting your words together, and you can avoid a lot of conflict that may happen. Always listen and observe and watch your back, basically, on everything that you got going on. So in other words, as my mama used to say, those eyes that's in the back of my head can move to the front of my head when I need to see something that's going on. So that's my advice.
Thank you so much, Kitti. Did anyone else want to add to that question?
Yes, I did want to add, when people talk about mentoring and finding you a mentor, I found it hard in higher education in the state of Oklahoma. And so what I did is I relied on some older Black women that I knew that were in different fields, not even in my field. I asked them questions, how can I handle myself in this type of situation? And they gave me instruction. Well, I also looked at my sorority sisters, particularly some people that I pledged with, and we get together, and once a month we have a video call. Before COVID, we were doing this because we live all across the United States. And we would talk about issues and problems we were having at work. How can we solve them? How can we talk those out? And then also somebody else, one of my other sororities was just like, oh, I have a career coach and this is what she told me to do. And I'm like, a career coach, we do that? And we do. And so there are some things that we as Black women need to look at that we might not think about. Because I never thought about having a career coach until somebody mentioned it to me. So I think looking at our sisters, regardless of what area they work in, everybody can probably have something that can add and help you in your career.
Thank you so much for adding to that, Dr. Monique. All right, now we're going to shift the conversation to really focus on strategies and how allies and employers can help create more equitable workplace environments. So Minda, additionally in this book, really speaks to the importance, this kind of segues from the previous question on finding that support system that many of you have touched on tonight in the workplace. And she points out the reality that it's not always the smartest person, the hardest working person, or even the most qualified person that gets that promotion or job. It's the person that has the relationship. And she even talks about, some of you have made this point tonight about how important it is to go out and go to those happy hours and go to those office parties and lunches, because that's where those relationships are built and where they can see you in a more natural element and vice versa. So how can we as Black women build these professional networks in the workplace environment and also just in the city in general? Francie and DesJean, would you like to add to that?
All right, so I've been really fortunate to be blessed by an employer who saw value in me as a Black woman and wanted to connect me with people in Oklahoma City and the state at large. Very specifically connected me with Leadership Oklahoma City and Leadership Oklahoma, which are two large networking leadership communities in our community. And through those leadership groups, I was able to meet more people and learn more things about my city and about my state in a way that equips me to introduce people I know to those people and more people that I meet through these experiences. And I think that's just it. We have to be intentional. Once we are given these opportunities, we have to look around for other Black women and really Black people in general to connect them to the new people we have met. If you know of someone that needs to meet someone else because they connect concerning their professionalism or a similar interest of some sort, it's your responsibility to connect them, to be intentional about that and do that. And that's something I try to make sure that I'm doing, because I realize that other Black women have not been given the opportunities that I was given through my employer to be a part of these awesome groups. We need more Black women and more Black people in those groups. Those groups are not incredibly diverse, and they are wanting more Black people in those groups, but we have to, shepherd each other there, suggest each other, nominate each other, have the confidence to join in on those types of things. Ask people to go to coffee, lunch. I mean, that's just something that you've got to do to get out there and pick people's brains and know where you're going to go from there. And if you're the person that gets asked to go to lunch or coffee, go, because it's very important that you share your experiences with that person who asked you. They're trying to do what we're telling them to do here in this meeting right now. And so if they do that, you have to be willing to receive it and act on it. With that said, when you get to lunch or coffee, if you're the mentor position versus the mentee, I think it's really important for you to be very specific and share very specific experiences that you've had so that the person on the receiving end, the mentee, if you will, can actually know what you're talking about. The generalities killed me in the beginning. I had a lot of meetings, a lot of lunches and coffees with people who were giving me general pitfalls to watch out for, but I didn't understand what that meant because I hadn't been in the shoes long and really at all. I hadn't been in the shoes at all. So whenever the specific, pitfalls and fireballs were heading my way, I couldn't detect them because I didn't even know what they were. So that's something that I highly stress, is that Black women share very specific experiences with each other, as to help the next one behind you know how to avoid that. There's plenty of other groups and leadership groups within our city, within our community, Urban League. We have sororities and fraternities that you can get involved with in non-member activities. You can dine local and meet restaurant owners and meet people that are sitting next to you at the local restaurants and learn their story and network with them. You can join the local professional clubs that you are associated with. For me, the Association of Black Lawyers, the local chapter, is something that I'm trying to be more involved with because it's important. And then, the Black Chamber, that's another one that people should get involved with if you're associated with the business community. If you have children, network with the parents at the soccer games and basketball games and things like that. You never know what type of valuable relationships you can build out of those connections. And I found that very helpful in terms of building a village around my son as a co-parent here in Oklahoma City. And not just that, but friendship and people who can understand what I'm going through. So those are some things I wanted to hit on.
Francie, I loved your point on being clear with that mentee-mentor dynamic. And I cannot tell you, I've been so fortunate as well to have some phenomenal mentors in my life. Some of them are even on here on this panel tonight. But I think it is really important that we're clear in our communication with one another, because things are already so challenging and difficult to navigate. And the last thing we want to do is confuse unnecessarily or instill fear. I've had women who are like, well, you better be careful, watch your back. Well, from what? Like, can you expand on who I should be looking out for and what I should be doing and who's talking about who? Like, being clear is being kind. And I think as we have this next generation of young Black women that are going to be coming up after us, we have to be clear with them and extend that same courtesy that hopefully has been extended to us as well. Thank you, Francie. All right, DesJean. Not sure if she's on. Do we lose her? Okay, we're gonna move. Does anybody want to answer that question of building those networks and support systems in Oklahoma City or in just in your workplace environment in particular?
Well, I do. I think that you can add those things, and I would tell, I've asked people and suggested to people that they really look at the junior league. I'm a sustaining member of the junior league, and it's not that you're not going to face some issues within that group, but I will tell you it's benefited me greatly, and I highly encourage young women, African American women, to take a look at that. It's volunteerism at its highest level. Those are things that I would suggest you do, as well as we've already talked about the sororities and other groups, your organizations that you are a part of. I'm a part of, I have been while I was working in the National Contract Management Association. And I've always encouraged people to do that because you get such a wide breadth of not only experiences with each group, but the relationships. And you will find, as my mother used to say, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And the more you know, the better off you're going to be.
So I would like to comment real quickly on that as well, too, because you're absolutely right. It is who you know, but you have to also know something, too. So in order to know something, you have to be involved, you have to stay connected, and you have to be engaged. And I would highly recommend women to get involved in some of these boards, commissions, and other advisory council positions that are out there, either offered by the city, state, county, or whomever. We have so many nonprofit organizations here in Oklahoma that you can get connected to, and from there you can climb on up and eventually maybe even be on a corporate board or something like that. And it's very, very important that we combine our forces and share this information with other women, because if you don't know what's going on, you can't go where it's going on. Okay.
Absolutely right. Thank you, Kitti. All right. So I recently read where Black women are fleeing workplace environments and running towards entrepreneurship and launching their own businesses to escape these trappings of racial inequities in the workplace environment. So on leaving a toxic workplace environment, when do you know it's time? Kitti, would you like to start us off?
Sure. The time to leave is when you cannot see that pathway to advancement, because in every occupation, you should be looking to move forward in it. And a lot of times women will stay where they are for whatever reasons. Me, I keep it moving. And when I'm moving, I bring someone along with me. But before you leave, always ask yourself if you're really making the right decision based upon what's happening with you, not because of something that someone else may have done to you. Because as women, most of us, we have mouths to feed, we got bills to pay, and you know what? It ain't gonna come if we ain't got a job. So therefore, you leave a toxic working environment when you're being mistreated, because nobody wants to stay anywhere where they're not being valued. You leave that environment where you know good and well that you're being overlooked. If there are promotions that are out there and you're never being called into the office door to get evaluated, maybe that job is not for you. You leave that job when you know there are other jobs out there that you're qualified for, you know? But anything short of being criminal, you stay there if it's a good paying job. Okay, I'm just going to tell you straight up, because this too shall pass and we can endure it all. But don't stay there too long where you're reciting the famous words of Fannie Lou Hamer: I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Because when you get that tired, there's nothing else you can do, and that environment is not going to change for you.
Thank you, Kitti. Would anyone else like to add?
I always tell people, first year, learn your job. Second year, do your job. Third year, start looking for another job. And it's not that you have to find another job. What I mean is really have your bags packed, ready to go in the event it gets so toxic you have to leave. In the event you're prepared to look for something else other than what you have. It's all about keeping all of your tools in that suitcase, knowing exactly what you're capable of doing, taking your experiences, and if need be, then you do leave, and particularly when it gets toxic. I think sometimes, and I think DesJean talked about it, was that we fail to realize our own value, the tools that we have, that we've gained, and sometimes we're a little fearful, but we all make decisions based on our family life and what's going on at the time. But again, when it gets to the point of being toxic, it is time to go. But keep your resume updated, basically keep it updated, and be ready to look for other opportunities that you have or can come across, so that you're ready to jump when it's time to jump, or when that opportunity does exist, that you can move. That's really what I think we all need to be looking for. And I encourage people, of course, with the Black Chamber of Commerce, we love to see African American women in businesses. But I guarantee you, the same issues that you have on the job, you're going to have when starting your own business, dealing with folks that don't look like you, and trying to ascertain loans, and trying to do all of those things relative to running a business. You're going to run into. It's just a different kind, but it's still the same kind, so to speak. So just be mindful that those tools you have, be ready to use them, and to take them with you wherever you may choose to go.
Beautiful points, ladies. And I love the encouragement and the empowerment that you all are sharing with by basically saying you don't have to stay. You can move around, you can transition, you will be valued somewhere else, and you never have to put up with the toxic work environment. So thank you for sharing that with our audience, because I know some people need to hear that. All right, so how can others, allies, and well-intended coworkers effectively advocate for Black women in the workplace and help build trust in the workplace and those relationships? Francie, love to hear from you on this.
So my mom always said actions speak louder than words. And I think you've got to show instead of talk about how you feel and how you want to make changes for Black women in a workplace. If you're really serious about it, you give them duties and leadership that are of the highest level within your organization. You promote them where they deserve to be placed in your organization. You ask them. I mean, there's no greater source than to know how you can be a better organization for Black women than to go to the source, the Black women that work at your organization. And if you don't have any Black women working at your organization, what does that say? I think that's where you have to start. And then once you have asked Black women how you can improve, then you do it versus just talking about it or telling donors or telling whoever is your source of funding, your consumers or whoever, that you support Black women or Black people, but you're not actually doing it. I see a lot of that going on, not necessarily at my place of employment, but friends of mine or whatever. It's more of a political front to say that you support Black women and Black people, but you're not actually doing it. And that's just frankly unacceptable. And Black women, we're at the time and the place where we're not going to let that slide. We're going to call it out and call it what it is. And you're no longer going to fly under the detection of, or the non-detection of every listening ear that will hear us. And we will say it loud. So that's really what I wanted to say, is just show it versus talking about it, and be intentional about speaking to the actual Black women that work for you. That's the most powerful source.
Yes, that follow through, especially in the day and age of social media, the internet, so on and so forth. People are watching you, and it may be trendy to make a post that you support Black lives or Black women matter to you, but people are watching what steps you're taking after that to actually make that message actionable. And I agree. I've seen a lot of people posting and talking heavy on social media, but when it comes down to how that translates in real life, I'm not really seeing the follow through. So I think it's just important for people to, if you're going to post that and take that stance, be ready to have an action item after that, because people are watching you and seeing if that is something that is true to what you are saying. So thank you for pointing that out, Francie. Dr. Monique.
Yes, I believe that, you can have allies that help you, but it's not all on me to educate somebody on how to treat me, how to respect me, how to help me. I mean, you do that on your own. I had to learn about the organization myself. I'm doing what I need to do for me, but so you get out there and learn some stuff too. And so I have some really good friends that are great allies, but they do the work. They don't wait on me to do the work. And if I send them a suggestion or in conversation, I mention something about a book, they'll go get the book and read it and then come back and say, Monique, I didn't understand this part. Well, that's when I'm willing to help, because that person went out and did the work. And so to me, a lot of people today who are posting these great posts and these pretty pictures, these great words, that's fine. To the people who checked on me and Monique, how are you doing? Are you okay? Well, that's fine. But if you're not doing anything to help me other than that, if you're not doing anything to help other Black people get better, then miss me with your concern and your face, fake white tears, this white fragility. I'm through with that. So stick to the point. And if you're going to be a real ally, then do something. It's more than just your words. We got to have some action. And you have to be educated. And a lot of times people learn these things that they say at home. And so it's ingrained in them for many, 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 many years. And it's hard to unlearn some of that stuff. I get it. But if you want to be a better person and if you truly want to be an ally, then you will put in the work yourself.
Very, very beautifully and eloquently said, Dr. Monique. Thank you. I think that is just so critical. I think it just feels so natural, I think, for folks to feel like, let me focus on the Black community. Let me see what I can do for the Black community. But really, what can you do for yourself? Because you can't help me if your cup is empty. You can't help me if you haven't checked and looked in the mirror and addressed your biases and the challenges that you face every day with racism as well. And so I think it's so important that you brought up that point that people got to start with them before they try helping other people and start right there. So thank you for bringing up that point. So my next question is, how can employers simply do better? How can employers do better? Kitti?
That one right there should be the most simplest thing that any employer should be able to do, especially if they want quality work out of people. Number one, stop the double standard stuff. It happens too frequently. Number two, recognize people's talents, experience, and knowledge. Just don't put them in a corner and say, you sit there until I'm ready for you to do something. And then third and foremost, just be fair and honest. That's all there is to it. It's so simple. And as an employer, that is the only thing that you need to do in order to make things better for your employees.
Thank you, Kitti. DesJean, would you like to add to that?
I would. Let me first say the devil is a lie and will not
It sure
keep
is.
me from having and finishing this conversation. It will not happen.
Glad you're back. Glad you're back.
Employers, everybody brings, their own set of experiences to the workplace. I've worked in a workplace environment where I remember, my direct supervisor, father was an alcoholic, he wanted a son, and it just created a whole dynamic for how she interacted with all of us. But everybody brings that into the workplace. So we have to be ready for that. Their biases, their fears, all of that sort of thing. But like Kitti said, we have to begin to see each other, and by extension, managers have to begin to see every employee as valuable, and that is it, not based on what, their preconceived notions are or their level of comfort. But I will say to every manager, owner, CEO, supervisor, or what have you, if you cannot imagine your workplace environment without that individual, then that means that they add value to your workplace. And you should then, show them their value through money, through movement, and through mentorship, investing in them. And that's how employers can do better.
Beautifully said. Thank you, DesJean. All right, y'all. So you go to sleep at night and wake up tomorrow morning. There is equity in the workplace, and Black women are thriving and living our best lives. What happened? I'd love to hear from all of you on this. Joanne, can we start with you?
Sure. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to stand as we welcome the President of the United States, Kamala Harris. Oh, that's what happens when I wake up and all Black women are taking a stand. We are at it. That's when we know this world is moving in the right direction.
Thank you. Francie?
Breonna Taylor's murderers are charged and sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Breonna Taylor. I think that when Black women's lives matter, when we're asleep with our significant others in our beds, our I'm back. Okay.
You're
I'm not
back.
sure where I was, but when Black women's lives matter, when they are asleep with their significant others, their lives will matter when they're in the workplace and everywhere else that they visit in their everyday lives. Too often, Black women's lives are easily disposable, and it is not going to be tolerated anymore. We need justice for all of the unjust actions taken against Black women and Black men, Black people of all gender identities and lack of gender identities. We need just criminal justice for Black people. That's what happened.
Thank you, Francie. DesJean?
But before I answer that question, I wanted to add something from earlier. As we look at the workplace environment to encourage, we talk about mentorship and investment and all of those things. But one of the things we have to do is look around, to the point Joanne was making earlier about being observant. Notice what gets rewarded at the organization where you work. And that will tell you so much about what you need to know about the culture. If backbiting and gossip and those things get rewarded, it tells you a lot about the people that you work for. If I wake up tomorrow and everything is right with the world and Black women are respected and honored and valued in the workplace, then what I will know is that the golden rule is true, and we're all living it out, to do unto others what you would have them do unto you, and that we're seeing each other as equals. So I will know that is true.
Thank you, DesJean. Dr. Monique?
I would say that if this happened, that we had the rapture and Jesus has come back to take us all home. and I guess I say that with a little jest, but seriously, the more I think about how Black women nowadays, we are taking a forefront, being in the forefront. Our last First Lady, Michelle Obama, you have Kamala Harris now, you have so many of the legislators that we have that are speaking out. We have these activists here, right here in our city, that are speaking out and doing great things. We're out there now, but we need support. We need to be able, and we need to pray for these women that are in power and coming into power now, because if we don't pray for them and we don't help them along the way, they may get weary. So, but really, God will have to come back and save us.
Thank you so much. Last but not least, Miss Kitti?
So I had to go back to sleep and wake up again because Joanne had the same dream that I had that night. So when I finally woke up again, my mind went to women are treated equally. We are getting paid the wages that we should be paid. We don't have to sit in the back and look in the front and see where we're going because we know where we're heading. And lastly, but not leastly, not only is Black beautiful, it is the best thing yet. So I'm happy for that. And I'm walking around with my invisible crown. Okay.
I love it. Thank you, ladies, so much. All right, we have a couple of questions from the audience. Please feel free to start dumping them in now because this is the segment of the panel we're going to cover a few. So someone from the audience asked, do diversity and inclusion workshops in corporate America actually work?
I think they can. But you know, it's just like any other workshop. You know, the information that you're learning or being trained on only works if you're willing to be honest that you actually need it. And so for people who think that that there fundamentally is no difference, there's no difference between, you know, this and that, black and white, male and female, then for them, those types of workshops will be just a checking of the box. You know, we have to really implement change at a significant level. And it becomes different when your supervisor, when your supervisor is black. You know, then you may recognize from the angst that you feel, you know, that maybe there might be some training in order. But until it's an everyday occurrence, then workshops like that, they do a little bit. They make people feel like I've learned a little bit of something. But until a person recognizes that they truly need to know, then, you know, they can be ineffective.
I would just like to add on to that a little bit, because I truly think that they could be effective. They could be and probably are effective as long as it's two-way communication and not someone talking to you about the situation who's never experienced anything that caused the reason to have the workshop.
Francie, were you to add something to that as well? I thought I saw you. Okay, lean in.
Well,
All right.
this is Joanne. You know, there's workshop and then there's policy. You can have a workshop, but you need to have policy that creates accountability for what you say you're going to do within that policy. And so I think that's where we're missing a lot, because there's no trail of accountability. Nobody wants to take the data. Nobody wants to see the numbers, because data and numbers tell the story. So until we move from workshop to policy to accountability, there may just be words.
Whew, a whole word right there. Thank you, Joanne. Monique, you wanted to add?
Yeah, I wanted to add that, you know, employers need to make sure they have skin in the game. And, you know, kind of like what Joanne was saying, we have to change these policies. We have to dismantle the systematic racism, the institutional racism. We have to move people out of offices that they are abusing their power. You know, we look at our district attorney and how he has put charges on people that is insane. But yet and still, he wants to talk about how he wants to, you know, he's colorblind and he's so, you know, inclusive in nature and, you know, and all of that. But that's not true. So we have to call people out. And so, you know, when we look at these training modules that people do, doing a 20-minute training where you watch the video, where you just put it on mute. And then when you get to at the end and you answer the questions and you already know the answers because it's stupid anyway, people aren't learning in those type of environments, you know, so it's going to have to be something more detailed, you know, not just a 3-hour half day or 8-hour workshop. And people have to, like I said earlier, they have to put in the work. They have to read some books and do some internal work, because sometimes they can't see you because they can't see them. And so I don't believe that many diversity and inclusion workshops work in the workplace because of that reason.
Yes, and I just to add to that, I think the model, depending on which one you're looking at, it's ineffective because usually it's just a one-time event, a one-time engagement. It needs to be an ongoing conversation. And I could not agree with you more, Joanne, built into the policy of the organization, into the infrastructure of the organization with the process on addressing the issues. But a lot of people, they bring in a trainer, they do a training, they do a quiz, and it's done. That's not going to get you very far. So thank you, ladies. Great answers on that one. We have another question. It looks like people want to hear more on this mentor piece. How do you identify mentors specifically? Anyone want to take that?
Well, you can identify a mentor with someone who you look up to. Maybe he has some of the same values and morals that you have. Maybe they work in the same industry, but they don't necessarily have to. You want to approach the mentor with some true questions. Make sure they have time for you. Make sure that they're willing to work with you and help give you real talk. And you have to also say what you want. What are you trying to develop? Are you trying to work on your resume, your interviewing skills? You want to get on some boards, or, what is it that you want to do so that the mentor can match you to those instances?
I also think that you recognize a mentor by knowing the difference between a mentor and a coach too, because you need a coach in your life just as well as a mentor. But mentors are just like coaches because they want to tell you what you need to know and show you what you need to do. So you need a person who's willing to help you along the way, but criticize you as well with constructive criticism so that you can grow into whatever it is that you're wanting to be. So that mentor, chances are, will be a person who's older than you are, who has more experience than you do. And sometimes a mentor can also be a younger person. So whatever you're looking for in a mentor should be a person who can satisfy your needs.
Thank you, Kitti.
When you're looking for a mentor, you have to understand that the relationship has to be a relationship. And so it can't just be one-sided, the mentor telling you what to do or suggesting these things. You really have to come understanding you have a role as a mentee to play too. And it has to be a dual relationship. So when that mentor says X, Y, and Z, and if you can accomplish those things, then come back to them. Take the effort to make sure you're meeting with the mentor, as well as the mentor needs to make sure that they're capturing it. So it really has to be someone that you develop a relationship with.
Right. Thank you, ladies. We're going to take one more question. How do you avoid, or how do Black women avoid the pet trap? And pet was defined as working hard to prove their worth and becoming overworked and relegated to office pets.
I have had that exact experience with an employer where all of my talents were kind of, she wanted to be the one to dole them out, like she was responsible for them. And it can be a real challenge because it creates a very toxic environment. I don't, in realizing that, I recognized that eventually that I was going to have to leave that organization because I would not be able to progress or move or even have peace as long as that was the leadership. But I think that looking for not so much mentors, but allies in the workplace environment, some of which are not going to look like you, is a really key part of navigating kind of that pet syndrome. Looking on, whether it's other women or even men in the workplace environment, people who will keep your name in their mouth in support of you and the work that you do. We talked earlier about working on outside boards and committees, but there are also internal projects within the organization where you can demonstrate your worth and your work ethic with other people who may not necessarily be your direct leadership.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to add to that? All right. Well, thank you all so
Vanessa, you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I just wanted to thank everyone so much for joining us here tonight. We're going to go ahead and close it out. My hope is that you all learned something valuable and can take this information back to your workplaces tomorrow and start getting to work and creating more equitable workplaces for all. Thank you again to our sponsors. Thank you, Minda, the author of the memo. This book is amazing. Thank you so much for helping me guide this conversation tonight. And you can follow Black Women's Voices OKC on all social media platforms and learn about future discussions and stay connected with us. Thank you all so much and have a great evening.
You're welcome.
Bye.